Footage aired by a Palestinian TV station shows a top Hamas leader receiving the news of the deaths of his 3 sons by an Israeli airstrike. France's government has presented a bill to allow adults with terminal illnesses to take lethal medication known as euthanasia. Russian strikes hit a shop and a pharmacy in a northeastern Ukrainian village close to the Russian border on Wednesday, killing 3 people, including a 14-year-old girl. Russian forces have continued to bomb eastern and southern Ukraine, despite making little gain into the 1,000-kilometre front line in recent months. Switzerland will host a conference in June aimed at achieving peace in Ukraine. Russia will not attend. China, a Moscow ally, has said it will consider taking part. The Nordic-Baltic countries will provide additional support to speed up Ukraine's EU accession by setting up a special team of EU experts.
Despite Russia's action, Ukraine and Moldova continue to take positive steps in their EU accession. It is critical that we maintain this momentum, and I'm therefore very glad and proud to here today in Visby, together with my minister colleagues, launch a unique Nordic-Baltic initiative to support Ukraine's EU accession.
President Joe Biden has welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to the White House for talks on Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas war, and the continued challenges presented by China. A Palestinian TV station has aired footage of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh receiving the news of the deaths of his 3 sons by an Israeli airstrike whilst visiting a hospital in Doha. Haniyeh has accused Israel of acting in the spirit of revenge and murder. It is not immediately clear how the deaths might affect ongoing ceasefire talks. In a statement published on X, formerly Twitter, the Israel Defense Force confirmed the strike. At least 11 bodies were recovered from a residential house in Zawaida in central Gaza after a strike hit on Tuesday night. The bodies of the family were taken to a nearby hospital. Some of the victims were preparing for Eid celebrations when the strike hit. France's government has presented a bill to allow adults with terminal illnesses to take lethal medication, known as euthanasia. There is a growing public demand for legal options for aid in dying, as a growing number of French people travel to neighbouring countries where euthanasia is legal. The bill has been in the pipeline for a long time.
Le premier, c'est d'être majeur. Le second, c'est de résider en France ou d'être de nationalité française. Et 3 conditions qui, elles, feront l'objet d'un examen par un médecin. Ces 3 conditions, c'est d'être atteint d'affections graves et incurables. Grave parce que le pronostic vital est engagé. Incurable parce que la maladie ne peut pas se soigner.
To benefit from the newly proposed measure, patients would need to be over 18 and be French citizens or live in France. Patients will need to prove they are seeking lethal medication of their own free will. Those with severe psychiatric conditions and neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's will not be eligible.
The Polish government has introduced strict limits on homework in a bid to modernise the country's education system. Teachers are now no longer required to give homework to children in the 1st to the 3rd grades, while homework is now optional for students in grades 4 to 8. Perhaps inevitably, the decree has been warmly received by pupils.
Bo te prace domowe to ich za bardzo nie lubiłam. I tak one trochę nie miały sensu, bo większość osób na przykład z klasy mojej to rano spisywało od kogoś, kto zrobił, albo przepisywało jeszcze z jakichś stron, więc to nie miało sensu.
But not everyone is convinced by the new rules. There's been dismay from within the teaching profession.
Nauczyciele generalnie wychodzą z założenia, że to się stało zbyt szybko, zbyt pośpiesznie, że za mało było takiej rozmowy, za mało było konsultacji, pojawił się imperatyw polityczny i tak, trzeba to było zrobić, a wydawało się, że należało rozmawiać z nauczycielami.
Poland's education system has undergone a number of controversial overhauls, with almost every new government making changes. This has often left parents and teachers confused and discouraged.
A major reform of the EU migration policy was approved by the European Parliament on Wednesday in Brussels, after a vote marked by protests inside and outside the hemicycle. All the 5 files included in the Pact on Migration and Asylum got the green light, even if some by a narrow margin.
Need to be able to vote with serenity.
The new rules introduce more solidarity among member states, but also more controls at the borders and more effective and swift asylum procedures that raise questions about migrants' fundamental rights. The rapporteurs defend a general compromise difficult to find, but overall acceptable.
The rules are there, they now need to be implemented. And we also have ensured that there is access for NGOs, for lawyers to give advice. So we have a number of safeguards. The question, like always already in the past, is do we ensure that everything is implemented? That will be the task for the next mandate.
The pact was supported by the 3 largest groups of the parliament, even with some defections, while both far-right and radical left voted against. The left group organized a rally in front of the parliament to protest against the, quote, death of the right to asylum. 161 civil society organizations call on MEPs to vote down the migration pact, and some activists even managed to make it into the plenary chamber and interrupt the voting session. One of the most contentious issues is the border procedure, a faster way to scrutinize certain categories of asylum seekers. Its rapporteur rejects the accusations.
Le Parlement européen s'est assuré de l'intégration de mesures qui permettaient d'assurer le respect de la Convention des droits de l'homme, c'est-à-dire les bonnes conditions d'accueil et, par exemple pour les enfants, le droit à la scolarité, à la bienveillance, à la protection, et également ceux de la Convention de Genève, c'est-à-dire que l'examen soit individuel.
The different parts of the pact will now have to be approved also by the member states, which could happen before the end of the month.
The European Union General Court has ruled in favour of 2 of Russia's wealthiest businessmen who challenged sanctions imposed on them by the EU. Mikhail Friedman and Peter Avon had been sanctioned over their alleged roles in Russia's war with Ukraine. The court ruled there was a lack of evidence to justify the decision. The ruling applies to the period from February 2022 to March 2023. The men are appealing the period after March in a separate case. The billionaires are major shareholders of Alpha Group, one of Russia's largest privately owned investment groups. Both left their positions with Alpha in March 2022. The judgment comes amid calls to use oligarchs' seized assets to fund Ukraine's defence. There are more than 1,700 individuals and 400 businesses on the EU's Russia sanctions list, which includes travel bans. While Friedman and Avon reportedly described the court's decision as being of the utmost significance, the widow of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny wrote of her disappointment in the court's decision, posting on X that neither man had spoken out against the war or made any efforts to stop it. She said they simply hired expensive lawyers and influential lobbyists. The court's ruling can be appealed by other European institutions in the European Court of Justice. The timeframe to appeal is less than 3 months.
Croatians are preparing to go to the polls next weekend for an early election vote. President Zoran Milanovic, known for his ties with Russia, called for early elections after parliament was dissolved in March. The president has accused Prime Minister Andrej Plenković of corruption. The latest scandal involves the appointment of a close ally of the governing party, Ivan Turudic, to the role of prosecutor general.
Zato nam je u smjenu Turudića, uz promjenu Lex AP, prva mjera u prvom tjednu promjena načina usklađenja mirovina, a onda već kod prvog rebalansa proračuna uvođenje trajnog dodatka kako bi umirovljenicima vratili u 4 godine ono što im je Plenković uzeo u 8.
Current Prime Minister Plenković, who has been in government since 2016, has denied the corruption claims and said his party is ready to continue in office.
Da još jedan mandat za novo povjerenje hrvatskih građana, spremni da u svim izazovima Hrvatska demokratska zajednica bude uvijek korak ispred svih drugih političkih opcija i da vodi hrvatski narod u još bolju budućnost.
The vote will be the first step of Croatia's super election year, involving European elections in June and the presidential vote in December.
More than double the amount of migrants have arrived in Greece compared to the same time frame last year. One island in southern Greece is seeing a recent influx of migrants from North Africa.
Thank you.
Πάντα έχω παραπάνω αλεύρι, γιατί αν έρθουν μετανάστες, τι θα φάνε. It's a river of people that they are desperate looking to leave their countries.
Local officials claim 9 million migrants are trying to make their way to Greece. Locals were told the number could rise to 20 million if conditions worsen.
Ζήσει όλο αυτόν τον κόσμο. Ό,τι χρήματα και να βοηθάει η Ευρώπη. Δεν γίνεται.
Countries along the Mediterranean are feeling the increasing number of migrants heading towards Europe the most.